Hey, howdy, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, hi, I'm Gray. Today we will be getting back into my mini essay series for the fandoms I've been a part of, and on the docket for today is the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. For the rest of the video, I will be calling it FNaF since that's a little less wordy. Now, the original FNaF games were all made by developer Scott Cawthon, who also made the first game in the sort of continuum Chipper and Sons Lumber Company. It was a cute little game, but a lot of the players said the characters were creepy and reminded them of scary animal animatronics, which Cawthon took to heart and made a game about said haunted animatronic animals. Now, the first game was released on August 8th, 2014. Now, I didn't really play the game until about 2 months after its release. I was watching it in mid August through Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, and Aya's Cupquake, who at the time was one of my favorite creators, other than another channel, but I'll speak more about her in a later video. I ended up playing the game because of someone else, though. Someone who brought a lot more into the story. This was Game Theory. I loved theorizing about games, so I already watched him, and when he did a video about FNaF, I figured I had to play it to see what I could get out of it. But like the Undertale fandom, there are a lot of parts to this fandom. There were animations, theories, fan songs, fan fictions, and of course, fan comics. Some were more appropriate than others. But a lot of those started after the second game came out in November 10th, 2014. With the addition of the new toy animatronics, there were a lot more characters and storylines for people to make. A very large fan animation world came out of this as well. People using traditional animation as well as 3D animation to make stories or just stupid, funny sort of shorts. One of the largest that I ever watched that came out of this came from the artist Tony Kreinite, who made a FNaF animation series that was pretty good. The story, in a way, followed each of the animatronics and showed the origin of Mangle and how they went from Funtime Foxy to Mangle and the relationships between all the animatronics. Again, like I said in the other essay, I mentioned how nostalgia kind of blinds us. So while I will link the movie in the description, it may be a bit dated and not as good as I remember or you remember. Another set of animations was people making YouTubers playing the games into animations. People like Markiplier and Jacksepticeye and so many others got animations made of them. And even artists such as Jaden Animations made one for Aya's Cupquake. There were also plenty of meme animations, specifically things like Pymations, who did one for each of the games. So moving swiftly on to another topic that rocked the fandom, fan comics. Plenty were put out, but few stood above the rest. A webcomic that was pretty big but really should not have been was Springtrap and Delia. I do not suggest you go read or watch it. It had some weird themes of Springtrap being very possessive of Delia, who was a young girl, and how he threatened to fight others who would become close to her. So, not a great theme, and many of the young fans in the series seem to ship Springtrap and Delia. Now, Springtrap, need I remind you, is a grown man whose spirit possesses a decaying robot, and Delia is a child. Weirdly, in a lot of the fandoms back in these days, there was so much bro shipping. I don't really recommend going into any of it. If you want a more in-depth video about it, below I'll link an incredible deep dive done by Quinneman. Getting into fanfiction super quickly, there was the normal kinds where writers would make elaborate stories and worlds and expand upon the lore that the community had already gathered. But there was also the other kind. Now, since the characters were anthropomorphic animals, a certain section of people also wrote for this. No judgment on what they find attractive, it's just not my cup of tea, so I didn't do much drinking of it. Moving quickly on, another very, very large part of the fandom was fan songs. Some of the most popular have been ones by the Living Tombstone, all of which are pretty good. My personal favorite is I Can't Fix You. All the songs by them had very big, like, electronic music vibes, and it's really influenced a lot of my taste and a lot of other FNaF songs, with that similar sort of electronic or more rock sound. Another personal favorite FNaF song is The Final Chapter by Adam Hulk. This one held that same kind of electronic sound, but also had the rock vibes of it all. JT Music released raps for just about every single FNaF game. A lot of them became very popular. They were all also on repeat throughout my entire life and are still within my playlists. The FNaF World song was my personal favorite by them because I just liked that the game that had so little reviews had a pretty good song to go with it. Songs like Stay Calm by Fandroid Music, You Can't Hide by CK9C, Join Us for a Bite by JT Music, Follow Me by Tryhard Ninja, and the entire FNAF musical by Random Encounters were some of the biggest songs and brought so many new people into the FNAF fandom. There were hundreds and hundreds of these songs for this game, all of them with unique takes on it and new spins. The FNAF musical was just that, a musical, where each night was also each game as it went on, while having some of the most popular creators in the space in it. Nate Wants to Battle, who was a musician, Markiplier, who was one of the first creators to play the game, was also self-proclaimed himself to be the king of Five Nights at Freddy's. And lastly, MatPat, who was the creator and main theorist, also original host of the channel Game Theory. We'll get into that in a little bit. Now, getting into the same guy who made that bad Undertale song I mentioned last time, Al Hugeni, he released a few songs about FNAF, and almost all of them weren't great. When you take that step back and really listen to them, plenty of people have pointed that out about the FNAF 3 song. It's just plain horrid, but the others weren't great either. And I was someone who was actively listening to them as a kid. I thought they were pretty good. But years later, when I came back to them, I was just in complete shock because of the lyrics. It really isn't worth the listen, but plenty of people have made videos about it, and I'll link one of those below if you really want to see someone else's takes on it. Now into the part of the fandom that I was very, very active in, the lore and theories that surrounded the game. I was big into game theory for many years because of FNAF and slightly before FNAF, but FNAF was the biggest contributor to keeping me engaged in that channel. The first theory put out was by the fans rather than the big channel, after seeing the bits of lore hinting about the kids' souls and the animatronics, as well as the phone guy. But in October of 2014, Game Theory put out a theory connecting the first game to a similar real-life event that happened at Chuck E. Cheese, where three people tragically lost their lives and one was critically injured. While this connection has been completely disproven by Scott to have anything to do with the games, it did get people thinking that there was more to this silly little horror game with funky animals. There could be a story, there could be something more there. MatPat and plenty of other theorists came up with all sorts of lore and figured a lot of it out. And some of it, I'd even say most, was correct. At some points, Cawthon himself even would come in and comment and let MatPat know, hey, this was right, but you got this bit wrong. His most controversial theory, I'd like to say, was the dream theory. That everything from 1 through 4 of FNAF was a dream because we're playing as the victim of the bite of 87. Because in FNAF 4, you see through the pixelated cutscenes, it's a child getting bit. But what was proven is that was the bite of 83. The crying child was the victim of Fredbear's Family Diner rather than Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So while that theory was wrong, it did lead to a lot of correct assumptions in the end about things like the puppet being Henrique Emily's daughter Charlotte, the Afton family itself, and the psychic friend Fredbear that's revealed even more throughout it all in Sister Location. The introduction of the books also helped with understanding parts of the lore as Scott intended them to be introduced. It introduced lore that was overlooked. Things like the illusions discs being mentioned in the second book, the twisted ones, as a direct reference to the discs on the Funtime animatronics in Sister Location. I'm not going to sit here and bore you with these details, but as someone who owned the FNAF Survival logbook and was actively looking for the Cassidy clue in the word search when all the online forums were just trying to figure out where are we going to put these numbers in, it's something that really was impactful. I also, at one point, had just about every line of dialogue from Ultimate Custom Night memorized in order to be able to pick it apart to figure out, oh, Chico was the first victim, and then it was this one. It's all this knowledge I have in my head that might be considered useless, but going and watching the FNAF movie in person and seeing Chica's magic rainbow on the ice cream machine and knowing the doll in the back room and who that was, it made it more special, I feel. Maybe one day I will do a deep dive just on the lore of FNaF since it was something I was super interested in and I took pretty detailed notes back in the day. But who knows about that? That's in the future. This came out, hopefully, on the anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's 1. It will be the 11th anniversary this year. So, happy birthday to FNaF. You changed just about my entire life in a big exaggeration way. But thank you all so much for the love on the last video essay, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, feel free to like the video and comment as I reply to all of those. If you are also a lore keeper for the fandom, I'd love to discuss it below with you. Feel free to subscribe if you want. I'm making more content like this as time goes on. I'm Gray, and I'll see you later.